The small bakery on Maple Street had been Clara Mitchell's destination for the past 3 birthdays, but this year felt different. As she pushed open the glass door with her 6-year-old son Tommy clutching her hand, the familiar scent of vanilla and buttercream felt more like a taunt than a comfort. In her worn leather purse, a crumpled $10 bill represented everything she had left until Friday's paycheck, and Friday was 3 days away. Tomorrow was Tommy's 7th birthday, and she had promised him a cake. A real cake from a real bakery, not another attempt at a homemade disaster like last year's lopsided chocolate creation that had made him cry. Clara's life hadn't always been measured in single bills and broken promises. 2 years ago, she'd been married to Derek, living in a comfortable suburban home with a reliable car and a pantry that never ran empty. But Derek's gambling addiction had slowly drained their savings, then their credit, and finally their marriage. The divorce left her with Tommy, a mountain of debt she hadn't created, and a determination to rebuild their lives one careful decision at a time. She'd taken the job as a receptionist at Henderson Medical Clinic, moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood that was safe, if not exactly pristine, and learned to stretch every dollar until it screamed. Tommy pressed his nose against the bakery's display case, his breath fogging the glass as he gazed at the elaborate creations inside. Clara watched her son's reflection, seeing the way his brown eyes, so much like her own, lit up at a 3-tiered princess cake, decorated with edible glitter. Her heart constricted. She knew what came next. "Mommy, can I have that one?" Tommy asked, pointing at a spaceship cake, complete with fondant astronauts and metallic silver frosting. The price tag read $45. Clara knelt beside him, brushing his dark hair back from his forehead. "That's a beautiful cake, sweetheart, but remember what we talked about. We need to find something smaller this year." The disappointment in Tommy's face was immediate, though he tried to hide it behind a brave smile that absolutely shattered her. "It's okay, Mommy. I don't need a big cake. Just something with chocolate?" "We'll find the perfect chocolate cake," Clara promised, though her throat felt tight. She stood and approached the counter, where a young employee with a name tag reading Melissa greeted her with a professional smile. "What can I help you with today?" Clara cleared her throat. "I'm looking for a small birthday cake, something simple, chocolate if possible. My budget is $10. Melissa's smile faltered slightly. "Oh. Our smallest cakes start at $18. We do have day-old cupcakes for $1.50 each, but—" She glanced at Tommy, who was still studying the display case with the focused intensity only children possess. "How many cupcakes could I get for $10? Clara asked, already doing the math. 6 cupcakes. She could arrange them on a plate, stick a candle in one, and sing Happy Birthday with enthusiasm loud enough to distract from what they represented. 6 with tax, Melissa confirmed, her voice sympathetic in a way that made Clara want to disappear into the floor. Behind her, the bell above the door chimed. Clara didn't turn around, too focused on maintaining her composure. She was a good mother. She worked hard. 6 cupcakes were better than nothing. Tommy would understand. He always understood, and that broke her heart more than anything else. "Actually," a deep male voice said from behind her, "I'd like to pay for whatever cake this young man wants." Clara spun around, ready to politely decline what was clearly pity from a stranger, but the words died in her throat when she saw the man standing there. He was probably in his mid-40s, tall and distinguished in a charcoal grey suit that Clara recognized, even with her limited fashion knowledge, as expensive. His dark hair had silver threads at the temples, and his blue eyes held a warmth that seemed genuine rather than condescending. "That's very kind," Clara managed, "but we couldn't possibly—" "Please," the man interrupted gently, then shifted his attention to Tommy. "It's your birthday tomorrow?" Tommy nodded, suddenly shy in the presence of this imposing stranger. "I'm gonna be 7. 7 is an excellent age," the man said seriously. "I remember my 7th birthday very clearly. My mother made me a chocolate cake from scratch and it was absolutely terrible." He leaned down conspiratorially toward Tommy. "She'd accidentally used salt instead of sugar. But you know what? It's still one of my favorite memories because she tried so hard to make it special." Tommy giggled, and Clara felt something in her chest loosen slightly. The stranger straightened and extended his hand to her. "Nathan Pierce, and before you refuse again, please know that I'm not offering out of pity. I'm offering because I can, and because every 7-year-old deserves a proper birthday cake." Clara hesitated, then shook his hand. His grip was firm and warm. Clara Mitchell, and this is Tommy. She wanted to refuse. Pride demanded that she refuse. But Tommy's hopeful expression, the weight of all the things she couldn't give him, and something in Nathan Pierce's eyes made her pause. "Mr. Pierce," she began. "Nathan, please. Nathan. This is incredibly generous, but I can't accept charity from a stranger." Nathan tilted his head thoughtfully. "What if it wasn't charity? What if it was an investment?" Clara frowned. "An investment in what?" "In kindness," Nathan said simply. "Someone once helped my mother when she was struggling. I'd like to pay that forward, unless you'd prefer I leave you to your purchase." He said it without judgment, and Clara realized he would actually walk away if she asked him to. She looked down at Tommy, who was watching her with those two wise eyes that had seen too much disappointment for such a young face. She thought about the $10 bill in her purse, the 3 days until payday, and the fact that she'd already skipped lunch twice this week to save money. "Okay," she whispered. "Thank you." Tommy's whoop of joy echoed through the small bakery as he rushed back to the display case. Nathan smiled and followed him, kneeling beside the glass. "So which one catches your eye?" For the next 10 minutes, Clara watched, as this stranger discussed the merits of various cakes with her son, with the seriousness of someone negotiating a business deal. They eventually settled on a chocolate cake with vanilla frosting and hand-piped racing cars, Tommy's current obsession. The price was $32. As Nathan paid, Melissa carefully boxed the cake. Clara stood to the side, emotions warring inside her: gratitude, embarrassment, relief, suspicion about why someone would do this. "It'll be ready for pickup tomorrow morning," Melissa said cheerfully, handing Nathan a receipt. "Actually," Nathan said, turning to Clara, "would you mind if I wrote my phone number on this receipt? Not for anything inappropriate," he added quickly, seeing her expression, "but I own a medical supply company, and we're always looking for reliable people. Henderson Medical Clinic. That's where you work, right? I saw your badge." Clara's hand flew to her chest, where her clinic ID hung on a lanyard. "Yes, but how did you—" "We supply them," Nathan said. "I was actually on my way to a meeting with Dr. Henderson when I stopped for coffee." He nodded toward the coffee shop next door. "Call me if you're ever interested in discussing opportunities. No pressure, no obligation, just a conversation." He handed her the receipt with a number written across the bottom, shook Tommy's hand with mock seriousness, and left the bakery before Clara could fully process what had just happened. Tommy tugged on her sleeve. "Mommy, that man was nice, like a superhero, but in a suit." Clara stared at the receipt in her hand, at the phone number written in confident, neat handwriting. Nathan Pierce, a medical supply company owner. Someone who had just bought her son a birthday cake and possibly offered her a job opportunity in the span of 15 minutes. "Yes, sweetheart," she murmured, watching through the window as Nathan Pierce climbed into a sleek black car. He was very nice, but as they walked home, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that this chance encounter was going to change their lives in ways she couldn't yet imagine. And tucked in the back of her mind was a question that would keep her awake that night. Why would a billionaire be in a small neighborhood bakery on a Tuesday afternoon? And why had he really helped them? Tommy's birthday party the next day was a modest affair, just the two of them in their small apartment, with balloons Clara had bought from the dollar store and streamers left over from last year. But when she placed the chocolate racing car cake on their kitchen table, Tommy's face lit up with such pure joy that Clara felt tears prick her eyes. She sang happy birthday while he bounced in his chair, and when he blew out the candles, she watched him squeeze his eyes shut, making a wish with an intensity that suggested he believed in magic with his whole heart. "What did you wish for?" Clara asked, cutting him a generous slice. "Can't tell or it won't come true," Tommy said seriously, then added, "But it's a good one, Mommy, the best one ever." As Tommy devoured his cake, getting frosting on his nose and cheeks, Clara's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and felt her stomach flip. It was a text from an unknown number. "Happy birthday to Tommy, hope the cake was everything he dreamed of. Nathan Pierce." How did he have her number? Then she remembered. Henderson Clinic's contact information was probably in his company's records. The text felt simultaneously thoughtful and slightly invasive, though she couldn't quite articulate why. She typed back a polite thank you and set the phone down, determined not to let it distract from Tommy's special day. But Nathan Pierce didn't fade into the category of kind stranger, as Clara had expected. 3 days later, when she arrived at work, Dr. Henderson called her into his office. The elderly physician, who'd given her a chance when other places had turned her away due to her limited experience, looked pleased about something. "Clara, I've just had a very interesting conversation with Nathan Pierce from Pierce Medical Solutions," he said, gesturing for her to sit. "Apparently you made quite an impression on him." Clara's cheeks flushed. "He was kind enough to help with my son's birthday cake. I didn't realize—" "He's asked if we'd be willing to loan you out for a special project," Dr. Henderson continued. "His company is launching a new patient outreach initiative, and they need someone with medical office experience to help coordinate it. It would be temporary, maybe 3 months, but the pay would be considerably more than what I can offer you here." He named a figure that made Clara's eyes widen. It was nearly double her current salary. "I don't understand," Clara said slowly. "Why me? He doesn't even know me." Dr. Henderson smiled. "Nathan Pierce didn't build a billion-dollar company by being careless about people. He said something about you showing grace under pressure and having qualities he values. He also assured me that your position here would be waiting for you when the project ends, and he's offered to pay the clinic to hire a temporary replacement so we're not left short-staffed." Clara's mind raced. The money would be life-changing. She could pay down some of Derek's old debts, build a small emergency fund, maybe even afford new shoes for Tommy, whose current pair was held together with glue. But something felt off about the whole situation. People didn't just offer opportunities like this to strangers they met in bakeries. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "Of course. He said you should call him directly when you're ready to discuss details." Dr. Henderson slid a business card across the desk. "For what it's worth, Clara, I've done business with Nathan Pierce for 15 years. He's a good man. Sometimes successful people just want to help because they remember what struggling felt like." That evening, after putting Tommy to bed, Clara sat at her small kitchen table and stared at Nathan Pierce's business card. She'd spent the day researching him online. Pierce Medical Solutions was indeed a major supplier in the healthcare industry, and Nathan's personal story was impressive. He'd started the company 25 years ago with a small loan, building it from a garage operation into a multi-state enterprise. There were photos of him at charity events, articles about his donations to children's hospitals, and interviews where he spoke about growing up with a single mother who'd worked 3 jobs to support him and his sister. Clara picked up her phone before she could overthink it and dialed his number. He answered on the second ring. "Clara, I was hoping you'd call. Mr. Pierce, Nathan, I need to ask you something directly," Clara said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Why are you doing this? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. And this feels like too much for a random act of kindness." There was a long pause, and Clara wondered if she'd offended him. Then Nathan sighed, a sound that carried unexpected weight. "You're right to question it. Can I tell you something personal?" "Okay. 28 years ago, my mother stood in a grocery store checkout line with a cart full of food and a debit card that got declined. She'd been paid, but my father, who'd left us 6 months earlier, had drained the joint account before she could stop him. A woman in line behind her paid for everything. $200 worth of groceries for a family she'd never met." His voice grew quieter. "My mother tried to get her name to pay her back someday, but the woman refused. She just said, 'Take care of your babies, and when you can, help someone else.'" Clara felt her throat tighten. "When I saw you in that bakery, trying so hard to give your son something special with $10, Nathan continued, I saw my mother. That same fierce love, that same dignity, even when things are hard. I'm not trying to be a savior, Clara. I'm just trying to honor a debt I can never repay to a woman whose name I never learned." "I don't know what to say," Clara whispered. "Say you'll at least consider the job offer," Nathan replied. "I promise you it's legitimate. I need someone organized, empathetic, and capable of handling sensitive information. You've managed a busy medical office for 2 years, which tells me you have those qualities. The fact that you're doing it while raising a child alone tells me you're also resilient and resourceful." "And if I'm terrible at it?" Clara asked, half joking. "Then we'll figure it out together," Nathan said simply. "But I don't think you will be." Clara made her decision in that moment, though she couldn't entirely explain why. Maybe it was the sincerity in Nathan's voice. Maybe it was the memory of Tommy's face when he saw his birthday cake. Maybe it was just exhaustion from treading water financially for so long. "Okay," she said, "I'll do it." Over the next 2 weeks, Clara transitioned from Henderson Clinic to Pierce Medical Solutions' downtown office. The building itself was intimidating. All glass and steel and people in expensive suits moving with purpose. Her first day, Nathan personally showed her to her new workspace, a bright office with a view of the city that made her old reception desk look like a closet. "This is Jennifer Blackstone, my executive assistant," Nathan said, introducing Clara to a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s. "She'll help you get oriented. Jennifer, this is Clara Mitchell, who will be heading up the patient outreach coordination." Jennifer's handshake was firm, her smile professional but warm. "Welcome aboard. Nathan's told me good things about you." As Nathan left them to it, Jennifer began explaining the project. Pierce Medical Solutions was launching an initiative to provide free medical equipment to low-income families. Wheelchairs, hospital beds, oxygen concentrators, and other essential items that insurance often wouldn't cover or that people couldn't afford during gaps in coverage. "It's personal for Nathan," Jennifer explained, as she showed Clara the database system they'd be using. "His mother needed a wheelchair after a stroke when he was in college, and they couldn't afford one. He ended up dropping out for a semester to work full-time to buy it." Clara listened, absorbing not just the practical information, but the glimpses into Nathan Pierce's character. This wasn't some tax write-off or publicity stunt. This was a man trying to fix the broken pieces of a system that had once broken his own family. By the end of her first week, Clara had settled into a rhythm. The work was challenging but fulfilling, coordinating with hospitals, verifying family needs, arranging deliveries. She worked closely with Nathan, who often stopped by her office to check on progress, and she found herself looking forward to those conversations. He was brilliant and driven, but he also asked about Tommy, remembered details she'd mentioned in passing, and had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard. On Friday afternoon, as Clara was preparing to leave, Nathan appeared at her door. "Do you have a minute?" he asked. "Of course." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him, and Clara noticed he seemed uncharacteristically nervous. "I wanted to ask you something, and please feel free to say no without any worry about your job." Clara's heart began to race. "Okay. Would you and Tommy like to have dinner with me tomorrow night? Nothing formal. There's a family restaurant near the park that has great pizza and an arcade. I thought Tommy might enjoy it." He rushed to add, "Just as friends. I know this is probably strange and I don't want you to feel pressured." "Yes," Clara interrupted, surprising herself. "We'd love to." Nathan's relieved smile transformed his entire face. "Really? Really?" As Clara drove home that evening, she couldn't stop smiling. But beneath the warmth of anticipation was a thread of anxiety she couldn't quite name. She was falling for Nathan Pierce. She could admit that to herself now. But there was still so much she didn't know about him, and a question that had been lurking in the back of her mind since that first day in the bakery suddenly demanded attention. What did a billionaire really want with a struggling single mother and her 7-year-old son? The restaurant Nathan had chosen was everything he'd promised: warm lighting, checkered tablecloths, and the cheerful chaos of families enjoying weekend meals together. Tommy's eyes had grown wide when Nathan arrived at their apartment to pick them up in his car, but within minutes, Nathan had him chattering about his favorite video games and the stray cat that sometimes visited their building's courtyard. Clara watched them interact over pepperoni pizza, seeing how natural Nathan was with her son. He didn't talk down to Tommy or treat him like an inconvenient addition to an adult evening. Instead, he listened with genuine interest when Tommy explained the complex rules of the card game his classmates played at recess, and he high-fived him when Tommy beat a particularly difficult level at the arcade. "Your turn, Mummy," Tommy called, waving her over to a racing game. As Clara slid into the seat next to her son, Nathan leaned against the machine, watching them with an expression she couldn't quite read. When their eyes met, he smiled, but there was something behind it, a sadness maybe, or a longing. After Tommy had exhausted his pile of arcade tokens and was happily coloring on the paper tablecloth with crayons the restaurant provided, Nathan cleared his throat. "Clara, there's something I need to tell you," he said quietly. Her stomach dropped. Here it was, whatever truth had been hovering at the edges of all his kindness. "Okay." Nathan glanced at Tommy, who was absorbed in drawing a spaceship. I wasn't completely honest about why I was at that bakery the day we met. Clara felt her defenses rise. What do you mean? I was there because of you, Nathan said, his voice steady but his eyes uncertain. Well, not you specifically at first. I'd asked Dr. Henderson to recommend someone from his staff who might be right for the outreach position. He mentioned you, said you were organized, compassionate, and dealing with some financial difficulties due to your ex-husband's debts. He thought the extra income could really help you. Clara's face flushed hot. Dr. Henderson told you about my personal situation? Only in the broadest terms, and only because I asked if he knew anyone who could benefit from the position, Nathan said quickly. I wanted to meet you before making a formal offer, but I didn't want to make it weird by showing up at the clinic, so I asked when you usually ran errands, and Henderson mentioned you often went to that bakery. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that made him seem suddenly more human and less polished. I was going to introduce myself casually, maybe strike up a conversation, but then I saw you and Tommy at the counter, and I heard what you said about your budget, and... He trailed off. And you felt sorry for me, Clara finished, her voice tight. No, Nathan said firmly. I felt recognition. Clara, everything I told you about my mother was true. Seeing you in that moment, it wasn't pity. It was respect. You were trying to give your son something special with the little you had, and that takes more strength than most people understand. Clara wanted to be angry, but the sincerity in his eyes made it difficult. You should have told me from the beginning. You're right, I should have, but I was afraid if I did, you'd refuse everything, the cake, the job, all of it. And I really did need someone for this position. He leaned forward, his hands clasped on the table. These past 3 weeks, you've exceeded every expectation. The families you've helped, the efficiency you've brought to the program, that's all you, Clara. Not charity, not luck, your skill. Tommy looked up from his drawing. Mummy, are you mad at Nathan? Clara took a deep breath, looking at her son's worried face. No, sweetheart, Nathan and I are just having a grown-up conversation. Okay, Tommy said, returning to his coloring, apparently satisfied. Clara turned back to Nathan. I need time to process this. Of course, Nathan said. Take all the time you need. The drive back to Clara's apartment was quiet, Tommy dozing in the back seat. When Nathan pulled up to her building, he turned to her. I'm sorry if I made you feel manipulated, he said softly. That was never my intention. Clara studied his face, the genuine remorse there, the vulnerability he was letting show. I believe you, she said finally. But Nathan, I need to understand something. Is this just about the job? Because sometimes the way you look at me... She couldn't finish the sentence. Nathan's expression shifted, something hopeful and cautious appearing in his eyes. No, it's not just about the job. Not anymore. Maybe not ever, if I'm being completely honest. When I saw you in that bakery, trying so hard to make your son happy despite everything, Clara, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you, your strength, your grace, the way you love Tommy. But I didn't want to say anything because of the power imbalance. You work for me now and I never want you to feel pressured or... I like you too, Clara interrupted, her heart pounding. It terrifies me, but I do. The smile that broke across Nathan's face was worth every moment of fear. Really? Really, Clara said, echoing their conversation from weeks ago. But we need to take this slowly. I have Tommy to think about, and I won't let him get attached to someone who might not stay. I understand, Nathan said. Slow is good. Slow is perfect. Over the next month, Clara and Nathan navigated the strange territory of dating while working together. They were careful around the office, professional and focused, but on weekends, Nathan would take Clara and Tommy to museums, parks, and once to a baseball game where Tommy caught a foul ball and declared it the best day of his life. Clara found herself falling deeper, watching how Nathan's barriers came down when they were together. He told her about his sister, Amanda, who lived in Seattle with her husband and 2 kids, about his father, who'd left when Nathan was 9 and whom he hadn't spoken to in over 30 years, about building his company from nothing and the loneliness that sometimes came with success. Everyone wants something from you when you have money, Nathan admitted one evening as they walked through a botanical garden while Tommy ran ahead, looking at flowers. Investors want your money, employees want promotions, charities want donations. All legitimate, all fine, but it's rare to meet someone who just wants you. Clara slipped her hand into his. I want you, she said simply. But their happiness was interrupted one Tuesday afternoon when Clara arrived at work to find Jennifer looking grave. Nathan needs to see you immediately, Jennifer said. It's urgent. Clara's stomach knotted as she walked to Nathan's office. When she entered, she found him standing by the window, his shoulders tense. A woman she'd never seen before sat in one of his chairs, elegant, poised, and watching Clara with cool assessment. "Clara, this is Victoria Preston," Nathan said, his voice strained. "My ex-fiancée." The word hit Clara like a physical blow. Ex-fiancée. Nathan had never mentioned being engaged. Victoria stood, extending a perfectly manicured hand. "It's lovely to meet you, Clara. Nathan's told me about his new project coordinator." The way she said project coordinator made it clear she knew Clara was more than that. "Victoria," Nathan said, a warning in his tone. "I'm just being friendly, darling," Victoria said, turning to him with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "After all, we're going to be seeing a lot more of each other now that the merger discussions have resumed." "Merger?" Clara asked, looking at Nathan. Nathan's jaw was tight. "Victoria's family owns Preston Healthcare Distribution. We've been in on-and-off negotiations about a potential merger for 3 years. I didn't mention it because the talks had stalled, and I didn't think they'd resume." "But they have," Victoria said smoothly. "And with our personal history, Nathan, we'll need to work very closely together to make this succeed. Long meetings, business dinners, possibly some travel. You understand how these things work." Clara understood perfectly. Victoria wasn't just Nathan's ex-fiancée. She was a threat wrapped in designer clothing and corporate leverage. "I should get back to work," Clara said, keeping her voice steady, even as her world tilted. "Clara, wait," Nathan started, but she was already walking toward the door. "It was nice meeting you, Victoria," Clara said over her shoulder, and left before either of them could see the tears threatening to spill. She made it to the bathroom before she broke down. In the privacy of a stall, Clara let herself cry, for the fairy tale she'd almost believed in, for Tommy who'd grown so attached to Nathan, for herself and the walls she'd let down, only to have reality come crashing back in. When she finally emerged, red-eyed but composed, Jennifer was waiting by the sinks. "Victoria Preston is a barracuda," Jennifer said bluntly. "She's been trying to get Nathan back for 2 years, ever since he broke off their engagement. Don't let her get in your head." "Why did he break it off?" Clara asked. Jennifer's expression softened, because he realized she loved his money and his status more than she loved him. But her company is important to this merger, and Nathan's been working toward this deal for years. It would expand Pierce Medical Solutions into 5 new states and help thousands more families. Clara washed her hands, staring at her reflection. "I can't compete with someone like her." "You're not competing," Jennifer said firmly. "You've already won. Anyone can see the way Nathan looks at you. Victoria knows it too. That's why she's here, trying to mark her territory." But as Clara returned to her office, she couldn't shake the image of Victoria's confident smile or the implications of what a merger would mean. Nathan and Victoria working together closely for months, possibly years, business dinners turning into late-night conversations, shared success creating new bonds. Clara had been poor before, heartbroken before, but she'd never felt quite as small as she did in that moment, wondering if a girl who'd once had only $10 could ever really hold on to a billionaire's heart. For 3 days, Clara avoided Nathan outside of necessary work communications. She threw herself into the outreach program, coordinating equipment deliveries and processing applications with mechanical efficiency. Nathan tried to talk to her several times, but she deflected with polite excuses about deadlines and meetings. At home, Tommy asked repeatedly when they'd see Nathan again, and each question felt like a small knife twist. On Thursday evening, Clara was packing up to leave when Nathan appeared at her office door. He looked exhausted, his tie loosened and his usually neat hair disheveled. "Please don't run," he said before she could gather her things. "Just give me 5 minutes." Clara sat back down, folding her hands in her lap. "Okay." Nathan closed the door and leaned against it, as if blocking her escape route. "Victoria and I were engaged 4 years ago. It lasted 8 months before I realized we wanted completely different things from life. She wanted a power couple, charity galas, society pages. I wanted a partner, not a business arrangement. When I broke it off, she was furious, not heartbroken, furious, as if I'd backed out of a merger instead of a marriage. "And now there's an actual merger," Clara said quietly. The merger talks resumed because Victoria's father is ill, Nathan continued. He's stepping down as CEO, and Victoria is taking over. She reached out, claiming she wanted to honor her father's vision of combining our companies. The deal could help tens of thousands of patients, Clara. It could expand our outreach program nationwide. I understand, Clara said, and she did. You have to do what's right for your company. But not at the cost of what's right for my life, Nathan said intensely. He crossed the room and knelt beside her chair, taking her hands. Victoria made it very clear during our negotiation meeting yesterday that she sees this merger as a pathway back into my personal life. She suggested we'd make an ideal partnership, both professionally and personally. She even implied that mixing business with someone in my employment, meaning you, could create conflicts of interest that might jeopardize the deal. Clara's breath caught. Is that true? No, Nathan said firmly. She's manipulating the situation. But Clara, I need you to understand something. I'm willing to walk away from this merger if it means losing you. The deal isn't worth it. Nathan, you can't. Yes, I can, he interrupted. I've built this company once. I can expand it another way. But you and Tommy, what we have, I won't find that again. I know that in my bones. Tears slipped down Clara's cheeks. I'm scared. I'm scared that you'll realize I'm just a receptionist with a mountain of debt and a second-hand car. That Victoria or someone like her is what you should have. Someone who fits into your world. Nathan cupped her face gently, wiping away her tears with his thumbs. You fit into the only world that matters to me. The real one. The one where people struggle and survive and love fiercely despite everything. Victoria lives in a different universe, one I tried to inhabit and nearly lost myself in. You brought me back to what's real, Clara. You and Tommy reminded me why I built this company in the first place, not for profit margins, but for people. What are you going to do about the merger? Clara asked. Nathan stood, pulling her up with him. I'm going to tell Victoria that the deal proceeds on purely professional terms, or it doesn't proceed at all, and I'm going to make damn sure she understands that you are not negotiable, not up for discussion, and not going anywhere. The next morning, Clara arrived at work to find the entire office buzzing with news. Victoria Preston had withdrawn from the merger talks entirely, citing fundamental differences in corporate vision. Jennifer caught Clara in the hallway, her eyes sparkling. Nathan told her the deal was off, unless she agreed to work with an intermediary team and limit direct contact to quarterly board meetings, Jennifer whispered. Victoria tried to call his bluff and he didn't blink. She backed out rather than accept those terms. Clara's heart raced. He actually walked away from the merger? Not completely, Jennifer said. He's already in talks with 2 other distribution companies. The expansion might take longer. But it'll happen, just without Victoria Preston trying to manipulate her way back into his life. That evening, Nathan picked up Clara and Tommy for what he'd mysteriously described as a special outing. He drove them out of the city to a beautiful park on a hillside, where a picnic was laid out on a blanket, complete with Tommy's favorite foods and a chocolate cake from the bakery where they'd first met. What's all this? Clara asked as Tommy immediately dove for the sandwiches. Nathan looked nervous again, the way he had when he'd first asked her to dinner. It's been exactly 3 months since we met. 3 months since the best day of my life, even though I didn't fully know it at the time. He pulled a small box from his pocket, and Clara's heart stopped. But when he opened it, it didn't contain a ring. Instead, there was a key. This is the key to a house about 10 minutes from here, Nathan said. 3 bedrooms, a big backyard, good school district. It's in your name, Clara, paid in full. Clara stared at him, unable to process what he was saying. Nathan, I can't. Please let me finish, he said gently. I'm not asking you to move in with me or making this conditional on our relationship. This is yours, regardless of what happens between us. You and Tommy deserve stability and security, and I want to give you that foundation. No more worrying about making rent. No more choosing between groceries and birthday cakes. Why? Clara whispered, tears streaming down her face. Because I love you, Nathan said simply. I love your strength, your kindness, the way you protect Tommy while still teaching him joy. I love how you challenge me to be better, and how you never let me hide behind my money or my success. I love that you see me, really see me, not Nathan Pierce the billionaire, but just Nathan, the man who wants to build a life with you. Tommy, who had been listening while pretending to focus on his food, suddenly spoke up. Does this mean Nathan can be my dad? The question hung in the air, innocent and devastating. Nathan looked at Clara, asking permission with his eyes. She nodded through her tears. Nathan turned to Tommy. "I would be honored to be your dad if that's what you want and what your mum wants. But that's a big decision we'd all make together, okay?" "Okay," Tommy said, then grinned. "Can we see the house? Does it have a yard big enough for a dog?" Nathan laughed, the sound full of relief and joy. "It definitely has a yard big enough for a dog." As they packed up the picnic and headed to see the house, Clara felt something shift inside her, the fear and doubt that had weighed on her for so long finally loosening their grip. She'd spent 2 years believing she had to do everything alone, that asking for help was weakness, that love was a luxury she couldn't afford. But watching Nathan show Tommy around the house, pointing out where they could put a swing set, discussing the merits of different dog breeds, making plans for a garden, Clara realized that strength wasn't just about surviving alone. Sometimes it was about having the courage to let someone in, to accept love when it was offered freely, and to believe that happy endings weren't just for other people. The house was beautiful. Warm hardwood floors, big windows that let in afternoon light, and a kitchen that made Clara's apartment kitchenette look like a toy. But what made her cry again was the smallest bedroom, which Nathan had already furnished as a space for Tommy, complete with a bookshelf full of new books and a telescope by the window. "You did all this before you even knew if I'd say yes?" Clara asked. Nathan wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "I had faith. Not in some fairy tale, but in what we have, what we're building together. You took a chance on me in that bakery, Clara, even when you had every reason to be suspicious or proud. You let me into your life, into Tommy's life. This is just me taking a chance on us." 6 months later, Clara stood in that same kitchen, wearing a simple white dress and holding a bouquet of wildflowers. Tommy, acting as ring-bearer in a suit he'd picked out himself, stood beside Nathan, who looked at Clara as if she were the most precious thing in the world. Jennifer served as maid of honor, and Dr. Henderson walked Clara down the makeshift aisle in their backyard, where a small group of friends and Nathan's sister Amanda had gathered. As Nathan slipped a ring onto Clara's finger, she thought about that day in the bakery, about $10, a birthday cake, and a chance encounter that had changed everything. She'd been so focused on what she didn't have that she'd almost missed what was being offered. Not rescue, not charity, but partnership. Love that saw her struggles and her strength as two sides of the same coin. "I love you," Nathan whispered as they were pronounced husband and wife. "My Clara, my home." "I love you too," she whispered back. "And Nathan, thank you for seeing us when we needed to be seen." Tommy cheered loudly as they kissed, and somewhere in the house, a puppy, a golden retriever they'd adopted last month and named Lucky, barked in excitement. Clara laughed against Nathan's lips, feeling the weight of worry she'd carried for so long finally completely fall away. She'd walked into a bakery with $10 and a broken heart, trying to give her son a moment of happiness. She'd walked out with something she'd never expected to find, a man who saw her worth, a future full of possibility, and the understanding that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change the entire trajectory of a life. As they celebrated with cake, chocolate with racing cars naturally, Clara caught Nathan's eye across the yard. He smiled at her, and in that smile was everything they'd built together. Trust, respect, partnership, and a love that had started with a simple gesture and grown into something neither of them could have imagined. Tommy tugged on her dress. "Mommy, I need to tell you something." "What is it, sweetheart?" "Remember my birthday wish? When I blew out the candles on the cake Nathan bought?" Clara knelt down to his level. "Yes, I remember. You said it was a good one." Tommy grinned, gap-toothed and glowing. "I wished that Nathan could be my daddy forever. And look, it came true." Clara pulled her son into a tight hug, tears of joy streaming down her face. Behind them, Nathan joined the embrace, wrapping his arms around both of them. And in that perfect moment, Clara understood that fairy tales weren't about princes rescuing princesses or magic solving problems. They were about people who chose to see each other, to help each other, and to build something beautiful from the smallest seeds of kindness.